Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Jeffrey Baccash, Head of Global ETF Solutions at BNP Paribas. Jeffrey, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hi, nice to speak with you, Jill. How are you today?
Good, doing well, thank you. And let's talk about the importance of data in the ETF ecosystem.
Yeah, there's two ETF markets. There's a secondary market and a primary market. And what happens is most individuals like myself, we access the ETF in the secondary market. But in order for that market to stay in equilibrium, the primary market, where a lot of the institutional players are, needs to have the proper information in order to supply that information back to the secondary market so that we could go ahead and make sure we're buying things and selling things at the most efficient price and keeping that market in equilibrium. So the data that comes from the institutional side is really critical in making sure that the secondary market is there.
What can the historic evolution of ETFs teach us about where ETFs may go in the future?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of factors here. The first is that price and timing to the market are really important. So we've seen previous ETFs that are launched early. They've been very successful. However, the most important factor is the ETF doing what it says it's going to do. The delivery of that to the underlying investor is really the most important factor. So as people are projecting what ETFs are to come, they really need to make sure that they're doing what they say they're going to be doing and that the ETF has unintended consequences. Original ETFs were set up for hedging products and trading products, and they really turned into retail investment vehicles. So who your initial base that you're targeting in today might not be the base that you're selling to in the future.
Why do you think ETFs will be part of the new ways of life post-pandemic?
They're a vehicle for disruption and new ideas. A lot of the ETF lends itself to being available for new ways of doing business. Question is, for a mutual fund, you have to wait for a price. Why wait for a price? In the post-pandemic world, we're used to getting things on applications, getting things quickly, knowing what we're paying for in advance, and the ETF lends itself to that. And people are also rethinking the investment process as a part of this new ways of life. And they're really saying, okay, I was in this, but can I be in this going forward?
And you recently published a golden age of ETFs. Previously, ETFs would likely follow an index. More actively managed ETFs are now coming to market. Why do you think that trend is being accelerated?
I think it's a combination of two things. You have the liquidity that an ETF provides, but a portfolio management skill set that classically has not been in the ETF and can come as more active ETFs hit the market. There's obviously regulatory considerations about that. But what has been in the news a lot has been some of the things around social media fueling certain securities to valuations. In a classic passive ETF, you just might have to live with that. An actively managed ETF, if it's not a part of the investment management thesis, there's ways that they could exclude it, and you as an investor might be protected if you choose so to be.
And Jeffrey, to wrap up here, if the ETF industry is to thrive, what will it need to do?
Well, everything has to work in unison. We really view the ETF as an ecosystem, and it's almost like a symphony orchestra. Everything has to be in sync for it to sound really good. And that's one of the big areas of focus for our bank, is making sure that we're supplying the investment in people, processes, technology, in order to facilitate the right workings in that primary ETF market, so that when the end consumer goes to get the ETF in the secondary market, everything is set up for them in a way that makes sense and it works well for them.
All right, Jeffrey, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks for having me.